Welcome to Dear Art Producer, a podcast connecting the photography and video community with art producers. Drawing on her agency experience some years ago, photography agent Heather Elder penned an open letter to art producers discussing the finer points of working with one another. This podcast takes that idea and will introduce you to different art producers, share the stories of their diverse career paths, explore what it means to stay relevant, and examine industry topics such as marketing, estimating, directing, websites, and more.
Hi, welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today we welcome someone different to the podcast. We're welcoming superstar agent Kelly Montez, owner of Apostrophe Reps. She's been an agent for 18 years and has seen so many of the changes we're going through firsthand. I first met Kelly at an ad agency where she and my husband were working, and we became fast friends. I've enjoyed our conversations over the years and know that she will be able to provide some really wonderful insight for us. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you, Heather?
I'm good. I'm happy to have you here with us today. I know we've been trying for a little while, and it's nice to connect and talk shop.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Totally. I think our community is really unique in that way that I think over the years, probably because of different events like Ad Edge or LeBook, we've all been able to get to know each other really well. And I feel like have really enjoyed the relationships we've had where we can share and talk and wonder if we're crazy and vent to each other.
Absolutely.
Oh, did I lose you? Oh, yeah. There you are.
For a minute, but now I'm back.
Okay. So would you agree with that we have a community that's pretty strong, this rep community?
Absolutely. And one that I rely on a lot to teach me how to be better at my job.
Yes.
So really thankful for knowing you as long as I have and how supportive you have been of me as an agent. And
that's nice of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these sorts of things, the podcasts and your blog are just so incredibly thoughtful and important for our community. And really, thank you again for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I don't know. I've just always felt like when I left the ad agency I was working at years and years and years ago, I was really missing that sense of community. And Lorianne and I would always joke that it was me, her, and the FedEx guy all the time. And when, I had the idea for the blog, I thought, that would be really great because I was enjoying these amazing friendship and relationships with these other reps. And I just thought, we're not doing rocket science here, and you and I might do our job completely differently. So if I share something with you, it's, I'm not sharing some trade secret. Like you are going to go do it your own way. So I just always felt like that was something our community needed, was a place to kind of have these conversations. So
it's so true. And especially for photographers out there in the world, it can be so isolating. You're looking and seeing what other work people are doing. You're sending marketing out into space and not knowing, are people opening it? Are they looking at it? And it's just helpful to hear what other people are doing and how they're navigating all of the changes in our industry. So I'm
definitely
happy to share some secrets.
Okay, good. Well, let's start with how you got into this business. I am a big proponent of reminding people that all of their experiences in life have led them to whatever that they're doing, right? They've informed who they are and have led them to where they are today. So where did you get your start?
Sure. I had an internship in college that was a really well-paying internship at an ad agency. And it was a small agency, and they gave me a really robust, amazing experience. And then when I graduated from college, it just sort of made sense that I would start looking for jobs in the ad agency world again. So I started on the client or the account management side at Goodby with your husband, John, working on the Discover credit card account. And it was the .com boom, and there was more work happening than the agency could keep up with. So at a young age, I got a really great experience managing a huge national print and outdoor campaign that took me to New York to shoot with a photographer by the name of Kenji Toma. And I got to know Kenji's agent, Jonathan Leader, the first owner of Apostrophe, really well. We shot together over the course of 2 or 3 years pretty consistently. And when Jonathan was looking to open up an office in San Francisco and take advantage of all that was happening in that first .com boom, he asked me if I wanted to be an agent. So just furthering that relationship with him, I opened up the San Francisco office of Apostrophe. And then the boom became the bust.
And we're still here.
And we're still here. And I remember calling you because I didn't know what a art buyer was or what a photo agent did. Goodby was a bit unique that they had their print to production department manage their photo shoots. So I just thought it sounded cool, and I didn't really understand what all went into it. I think I was like 23 maybe at the time. And I remember talking to you and saying, oh yeah, Jonathan wants me to be profitable in 3 months. And you gave me the best advice. I think I've heard this throughout the years, but I now give this advice to so many people in various aspects of business as well as in life. Change takes a year to really see the results of what you've put forth. And you were right. It took about a year to really launch the West Coast office and see the potential for what it could be.
Yeah, it's so true. And thank you for mentioning that. I still use that today completely because I feel like it takes me a year to get around the country, right? Yeah. If I have a new photographer, and that assumes that new photographer has all their tools in place and everything ready to go. So if you don't have all of that in place, or maybe we're making changes, it's going to take longer for a year to affect any change. And add to that whatever it's going to take to get you up and running.
Absolutely. And there's so many times that you do want to do those tweaks and you do want things to be in the right place in order for that launch to have the biggest impact that it possibly can. But it's interesting. We do one big book edit a year for each artist, typically around this time, around the beginning of the year, because it does take us a year to cycle around the country and show off that book.
Do your photographers edit their books at the same time? Or do you find that they're doing it once a year, but around their own schedule?
A little bit of both. I think that right now we are developing our 2020 game plans with all of our artists and taking a look back at what was successful in 2019, where we might have missed the mark, and what we want to do to make sure that 2020 is successful. And once you start having those conversations, you naturally start looking at web edits, you start looking at your book, and you start thinking about what you need to do to set yourself up for success. A new year always has that new beginning.
Yeah, no, that's the same thing for us.
Yeah.
I just find that their portfolio is the hardest thing for them to have the time to edit. And I also find that it's sometimes challenging because if they're busy and they're shooting pharma, they can't share it. And so they may have a lot of new work, but they're not able to put it in the book. So that tends to be a bit of a challenge.
Definitely. I mean, and that's the flip side. There's just the realities of time and the holidays. So we try to do it at the beginning of the year, but a lot of times there are conversations of, wow, there's a lot of work from last year that we're not able to show, and we need to fill in the holes with some tests. And it comes a few months later. So it happens at some point within the course of the year. We try to make it as early as possible, but being busy is always a good thing. So
yeah. No, I agree with that. Okay, so gosh, if you're in the same boat I am right now, where I'm thinking about 2019, kind of chronicling everything that's happened in 2019 and then trying to formulate a plan for 2020. And a lot of that includes thinking about our industry on a bigger picture and providing some insights to our photographers. Is there anything that kind of is exciting to you right now about what's going on in our industry? Everybody starts by talking about what's scary, right? And we can talk about that too. But I like, is there something that's exciting you right now?
I really enjoy all the conversations that we're having brand direct and how those relationships are growing and the opportunities that they are providing for our artists to be partners with brands and to make suggestions creatively. I'm definitely a person that is a glass half full, always have been my whole life. So I feel very blessed in that regard. So yes, there are absolutely challenges in our industry, but I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially in the motion sphere of things. I really feel like that's where my artists have grown and where our agency has grown in the last couple of years. And it's fun to learn something new and to flex your brain in a different way. And trying to help educate clients that you can't just take a shot list from a photo shoot and have that translate over into a motion shoot. So learning how to navigate that with my clients and educate them and give them the power, the knowledge to go back and talk to their clients or their internal teams has been really exciting in terms of being able to develop new partnerships with people.
Do you feel like your artists first of all, are they all doing motion?
Yes. Some people are further along the curve than others for sure. But I would say 80% of the bids that come in have some sort of motion component. And even probably somewhere between 40 to 50% are just motion only.
I agree. Point. Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. And I do feel like, those photographers, whether I represent them or not, because I'm having lots of conversations with plenty of photographers who are not on our roster. And those photographers who approach me that do not do motion, it's an interesting conversation because they're limiting themselves in terms of the amount of opportunities that would come their way. Because I've talked to plenty of art buyers and art producers who say, if I don't see motion on your site, I'm going to move on to somebody who has it. And I think that's challenging for some people who might be deciding that it's not something that they want. And to those people, I say, you need to have a solution. So it may not be you doing it, but you do need to have a partner that can help you, at least so that you can get on those consideration lists. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't think it's a choice anymore. I think it's what's the term that I'm looking for? It's sort of like, it's just a part of our world now.
Yeah, it's expected.
It's expected.
Yeah.
The one thing that I have found that's very interesting, we've been doing a lot of reviews this back half of the year, traveling to various places. And the feedback that I've been getting from agencies is that they're very excited because they have a lot of stills only campaigns that are percolating for 2020. I believe what is happening is that social media has gotten to be so expensive in terms of an advertising placement that brands and media strategists from the agency side are looking more towards out of home and reaching people where they live. So I am excited that there may be an opportunity for more still only campaigns next year. But at the same time, I see motion as part of a photographer's toolkit, their ability to direct, and they need to be prepared to bring both of those things to the table.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've been hearing a little bit of that as well. So that would be exciting. It would be nice to see it come back around a little bit more. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the role of a rep. I know that some photographers that listen often email me and have asked me to have a rep on. So you are our first rep, and I think maybe it might be a good time to kind of just talk a little bit about what you think the most important roles of a rep are. So for people who are thinking they might need one, how would you define what you do?
I am your business partner. And I think that is important for photographers to understand. I am not a miracle worker. Just because you sign with me, it doesn't mean that you can take a back seat on your career and you can turn everything over to me. That is not being a good business partner. It is important that you continue to maintain your brand and that you put the time and effort into growing your business, and that you give me the tools that I need in order to be able to promote you.
And what are some of those tools that you need?
Well, images, content, just like any other brand, that I need to be pushing out new work to my clients. And like you touched upon earlier, there are some tech companies and some pharmaceutical companies and a lot of brands in general now.
Yeah, it is. It is not just pharma. You're right.
Yeah, it's across the board a struggle to get work back from brands. And sometimes we could have somebody who is exceptionally busy, but the work doesn't launch for a year. Mm-hmm. So even though they're shooting, the work just isn't coming out. So it's important that we always have imagery from the artist to put out there. And that they maintain their relationships with clients. We, of course, are going to be reaching out to the art directors and the art buyers and the marketing folks that hire our artists. But at the same time, there's a different conversation that can happen with the artist directly. And if we work together to continue to cultivate those relationships with our clients, they only become stronger.
That's so true. And I think that idea of being a partner is really important, because there are things that I do and you do that are very different than what the photographer does in terms of relationship building. And I'm not talking about the creative part or the execution of the, of the project. I'm talking about the cultivating of a relationship. And we're so much stronger together. And I would argue that the effects are exponential when we're working together, as opposed to being seen as the only person out there trying to, cheerlead.
And there's so many artists in the industry. Developing a deeper relationship with a client is what leads to continuing work with someone who you've already shot with, or developing an opportunity with someone. And that is, I think, sometimes difficult for artists who just want to be making work to also understand that they're running a small business and that they have to invest in it. There's so much that falls on my plate as an agent. I need them to be my business partner and work with me.
Well, I've always said it's easier to get more work out of a current client than it is to get a brand new client.
Absolutely.
And I think that is really a powerful thing to think about. So, and I think most photographers who have been in this business for a while understand how important you can't you can't move on to the next thing once you've gotten a job. You really need to cultivate that relationship and do the best job you obviously can, and hope that it does lead to something longer term, as opposed to, just moving on to the next one because you think there's so many more behind it.
Absolutely. And just recognize that there's always an opportunity to create something, to make something happen. I mean, a lot of times my artists will say, oh, does it make sense for me to do a mailer? Or should I invest all this time in this treatment? I didn't really feel like that was such a great phone call. And my response is, well, if you don't try it, then no opportunity will be created. Like, you have to put the foot forward. You have to try in order for the opportunity to come.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like each opportunity that comes your way for a job is not just an opportunity for a job. You know, sometimes it'll take 3 or 4 times to hear from a client before they feel comfortable connecting with you. So if you feel like that call didn't go well, or you feel like someone else might be better suited for a job, or you've heard who's bidding and you always feel like they underbid you, or whatever the reason is, you're missing out on an at-bat if you pull back. So it's really important to put your best foot forward every single time. And so that if it doesn't work out this time, the experience will be positive for the next time. And I would say more times that happens, it does come back to you.
Yeah. I believe that when someone looks at you for a bid or looks at you for a project, it's because they see something in your work. You're on their short list. So yeah, maybe you don't get that particular project for whatever the reason, but it's still a job interview, and you still later on down the line can convert that person, that opportunity, into a different job. How
has your rep role changed over the years? I mean, 18 years, that's a long time, right? I've been doing it longer. And I recently just kind of did this summary of the industry about what it was 25 years ago and what I do now. And it's amazing, the differences. And for the photographers too, I'm not saying life has stood still for them, but from a rep's point of view, how has it changed for you?
I remember we would get a book request and you would send the book out, and then you would get the request for a bid. And back then you didn't really even have to triple bid. You would get the budget and you would work with the client to come to an agreement, and you would execute on the project. It was just so much simpler.
Well, and no big creative call, no treatment, no pre-bid, no pre-image pull.
It was, I mean, sometimes your book would come back and you could tell that it was had been torn apart. People had scanned it. That's okay. And you knew all of the major players in the industry. You knew the key art buyers at the advertising agencies, and you could manage all of those relationships. And now it's so much different. There are so many different people that buy at so many different companies, and reaching them and connecting with them takes an incredible amount of time and research. And then there's the social media aspect. Just like I said earlier, I'm a brand too. I need content. And so putting together our social media game plan, from our blog to Instagram, and pushing materials out that way. I believe in books. I believe in connecting with creatives at portfolio reviews and showing books. And so we still travel and we show books, but we also try to have more intimate connections with our clients, take them out to lunch, to coffee, hear about what their challenges are, hear about how we can partner with them. Apostrophe, about 3 or 4 years ago, opened up a production arm as well. So now we're also managing a lot of production, which we didn't do in the beginning as well. So many things. And it's exciting because it keeps my role ever changing, and it brings new challenges that help me expand my arsenal, and I think make me a better agent. But there are definitely times where I take a step back and I'm like, oh my gosh, the role of an agent has gotten so much bigger. The contracts that I have to read, The amount of times a week I'm on the phone with my lawyer to discuss what something means. I really am like, should I have gone to law school? These are...
Oh, that's so funny. I just said that to a client the other day because I felt like there was so much back and forth on, these terms and conditions that I was reviewing. And I was joking with her that I felt like, my God, I think I need to go to law school because they're becoming more, between the NDAs, the terms, the POs, they're becoming so much more complicated and, nowhere near as standard as they used to be. And I'm spending much more time reviewing those and being very specific about what our needs are. And trying to talk to photographers about being okay with walking away from something that doesn't meet the terms that are important to you.
And hopefully having clients understand why you can't agree.
Absolutely.
And that their contract a lot of times is based on working with a large corporation as opposed to small business owners. Really, one of my biggest uphill battles has been payment terms. So many companies now are just automatically net 90 days. And that's something that we just can't agree to. We can't operate our business and carry the burden of a photo shoot financially for 90 days.
Yeah, no, that's just the insanity of that is, something we talk about all the time. There's no way, even if you're the most successful photographer out there, if you're asked to front $100,000 job, a $200,000 job or more for 90 days, well, that's fine. You might be able to afford that. You might have a line of credit. You might be very fortunate that way, but you also might have 3 or 4 other productions in the pipeline. And it's not fair to be the one being asked to cover that. And it's not right.
Well, and it's 90 days from when the invoice is submitted. So
exactly.
These jobs are so complicated, and then there's payroll involved, and it takes a while to put together those invoices. So yeah, you're really looking at more like 120 days.
It's too much, totally. Just as kind of an aside, when we were talking about like NDAs and terms and things, one thing that I've been noticing is somewhat of a rights grab in the NDAs, right? We would get NDAs in the past and we would realize, but the photographers would just sign them because it was like, yeah, of course I'm not going to say anything. Yeah. And then they started getting more complicated and we started reading them more specifically and seeing that they would put language in there asking for rights to whatever is created, regardless of who shoots it. They own that. And we didn't like that. And then we started pushing back on that. And we've started asking for mutual NDAs because not only are they sharing their ideas with us, but we're sharing our ideas with them. And who's to say that they're not going to take our idea and choose another photographer and use that? We need to be protected for that.
That is something that we have noticed as well. The other thing that has become a trend, there's a lot of production companies out there that are also art buying now as well and come to us with projects. And we've found in their NDAs and within their contracts that they will have a clause that says that we will not solicit business from their client. But a lot of times we may work with a brand through a production company. We may work with a brand directly, or we may work with a brand through an advertising agency. And trying to make them understand, like, well, we're not trying to take your client away or do anything with a lack of integrity. It's just that we already have a pre-existing relationship. I can't promise you that I'm not going to work with this brand in any other capacity except for through you. That's not a reasonable ask.
It's not. And especially because we are independent, right? We're in a sense freelance. So we're always looking for our next project and we're always cultivating our relationships. So they're not hiring us exclusively. They're not putting us on contract, right? So it's not viable. It's not correct for them to ask us to do that.
Yeah. I think the worst, though, is that that email that comes from your photographer that says, they had me sign this on set. And you're like, no.
Right.
How many times have I told you? Don't sign anything.
Do that. That's hysterical. Okay, well, how do you think your photographers define success?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that, of course, there's a certain amount of just financial comfort that whether or not it's explicit with them, that defines success. The fact that they're working and they feel confident in not only supporting themselves, but growing their lives. That's sort of an unwritten rule for success. But I think something more and more with my artists that I appreciate is that they feel like they're bidding and working on projects where they have a voice, where they can contribute creatively, and that clients are coming to them for what it is that they specifically do and how they're going to be able to grow and expand upon a project versus just executing it. That is something that I feel like as we start to move into our 2020 goals, that a lot of people are saying that they want to find that client that fits their personality, that's going to allow them to be more creative.
I agree with that. I also have photographers who a couple of years ago, one in particular came to me and just said, I'm tired of waiting for the phone to ring for that amazing project, right? And what he meant by that was he was busy, which was fine, and he was happy with that, of course. But after a while, sometimes those amazing creative projects don't come as often as you would want them to. And he realized he didn't have to wait around for the phone to ring for that. He started creating those projects on his own. And I think there's something in the last few years, I've noticed this shift in how photographers are thinking in terms of their own content and what they create. And they don't have to create an image that goes into a portfolio because there felt like there was a hole there. They're actually creating stories or creating projects or meaningful collections of images and maybe videos. And they're collaborating with people, and I think are feeling really empowered in terms of how they go about that process. And I see it happening with their personal projects and also seeping into how they approach their client projects.
I also feel the same way. I mean, in many instances, a treatment can be such a large undertaking for an artist, but there is also opportunities within those treatments to expand on something creatively as well. And in terms of pitching clients too and creating the projects, a number of my artists have started putting together capabilities decks so that people understand they don't need to just come to them for the execution of a project, but they enjoy the art direction and working with set design and managing post-production, taking advantage of their full creative suite, much the way an ad agency would pitch to a client as well, so that people...
Absolutely. Yeah, we're doing that a lot. And I think it's important in today's industry for photographers to be able to do that. Because I think in the past, they were just hired because they were the person that they wanted to take that particular image. And we've moved way beyond the hero image to include the library, to include motion, to include, creative direction, to include buttoned up production that they're handling on their own, set design, all the extra things that they're bringing to the table in terms of the creative process, that I think people are looking at them way more as partners rather than just the photographer who's going to take the picture we need.
Yeah. It's been an interesting conversation with clients on the flip side in terms of bidding too, just to talk about what the prep of a project involves from the photographer's time as well. That's something I feel like that's really changed over the last 5 years as agencies are wanting more of that input. I feel like one of my new roles as a rep is also making sure that their time is accounted for and appreciated and respected, and that it comes with a fee.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I mean, if you think about between, I think we mentioned it earlier, but there's probably a pre-image pull, right? Yep. Maybe I'm starting to get calls, instead of send me links of who you think is appropriate, I'm getting calls of, can you put together a PDF, please, of appropriate images? Because the art directors and the creatives are getting lost in the links, because if they see something they don't like, they don't think the photographer can do it. So the art producers are working hard to try and kind of curate what they're seeing. So it's almost like we're going back to the like custom portfolio, but with a PDF. Yep. So there's that. Is different. We're then pulling images ahead of a treatment for them to review. We've, of course, got the creative call. We've got the treatment. There might be, multiple rounds of revisions on the estimates. So, we used to joke about the thickness of a file, and we don't print everything out anymore, but, if I were to be, I think my files would be so much thicker than they used to be.
Oh, yeah. The revisions on estimates. So many revisions.
So many, right?
So many. Slicing and dicing it in different ways, which is fine. If they gave me their budgets from the beginning, I'm like, I can guess, but I'm most likely going to guess wrong. If I knew from the beginning, I would. Well, and I think it's also managing your artists' expectations of how they're going to be able to approach a project, and managing the creative's expectations. We can get on a phone call and really go to town creatively and come up with some amazing, amazing ideas. But if the budget isn't there to support it, we would naturally try to propose something else that would give them wonderful creative, just more in line with what it is that they could afford.
Yeah. This conversation comes up a lot on the Art Producer podcast episode. And, I think what it comes down to in general is this idea that, look, if I've worked with you before and you have clients that we all know, and your intention is you understand advertising and what it costs, there's probably enough money or a decent amount of money for us to give you an estimate without a budget, and then know that there's going to be some back and forth. But if you're a client that I've never worked with, or an small agency that, has a new client that you've never worked with, everybody's expectations of what enough money is always off base. And I find that when I ask questions of those people and they don't know the answers, I'm still willing, of course, to give them a ballpark, but that's when I'm way off. And they come back and they're like, oh, shoot, we only have $30,000. And you're like, okay, that's way different than the $100,000 or $200,000 with, 5 days of shooting and 10 talent, like way more. So I try really hard to, without insulting someone or making the conversation awkward, try and drill down with those newer clients, especially the brand direct. They were getting a lot of those calls, like you said, and sometimes they don't have the money or the understanding because they've never done it before. So I feel like there's a lot of those conversations happening as well.
Yeah, just trying to make them understand that it's not just about getting a home off of Airbnb, but the permits and the parking and the layout board and the expectation that you're going to have 15 people coming through that home. There's some of that with some of the new startup brands that offer a lot of flexibility for the artists creatively. So I want to be able to make those projects come to life. I just also want to make sure that they understand what it takes to produce a project appropriately. And I'm always happy to help a client with budgeting as they're trying to set budgets with their clients and set them up for success.
I agree. I don't think I could survive. I don't think my business could survive if I were so rigid about certain fee levels or certain budget parameters. We want to be resourceful and nimble, and I want you to call me because you know that I'm going to help you try and solve your budget and creative challenge. And I've got photographers and directors that are just as willing to creatively come up with a solution that would work for you.
That is something that, as you're saying, this reminds me, I try to have the conversation with my artists, and I think that they all understand this, about what is a client really asking for. If you're a Fortune 100 company, yes, you can, when you say you want unlimited rights on something, you're going to be able to buy a media plan that supports that creative. But if you're a brand that's just starting out, what is the true life of a picture? Where will that picture really run? For the most part, if it's a startup brand, they're not going to be doing some major national ad campaign. So we need to think a little bit about who the client is, as well as what is the life of a picture. And the moment you put a piece of tech in a picture, that gives that picture an automatic shelf life. And
exactly. Well, in a car.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Exactly. You can go ahead and ask for all the rights in the world, but you have defined your time period with that one thing already. And so I try to consider that as I'm putting together budgets, the size of the client, what the shelf life of an image is going to be, so that I can work with them on their budgets.
Let's talk a little bit about getting your attention. There's been so many changes in the industry over the year. And, when I think about the most important qualities of a commercial photographer, I try and think about how they inspire other people to create work. And I try and think about how they would attract attention for their own work to get hired. What are some of the things that you think about when you're thinking about representing someone? And let's start with that.
It is hard to get my attention, if I'm being honest. There's just so much that goes into being a rep, and there's so much that I feel I need to do to push my company forward, to push my artists forward. And I'm very busy with that full-time job. I love looking at work. And I love looking at new artists. And I love the conversations that happen with people that are off my roster. I've always enjoyed reviewing at like a Palm Springs Photo Festival or a PhotoWorks, just because talking to artists outside my roster and hearing about those challenges helps me be a better agent even to my roster of artists. But there's just so many constraints on time. So I try my hardest to respond to every person that reaches out to us about representation at some point in time. But it can be really difficult to stay on top of that. A lot of times we find the artists that we work with through our styling division. They start working with our stylists, and our stylists talk to us about what great collaborators they are. And then they get a sense of how Apostrophe works because they're putting together contracts with our stylist division and the producers within the styling division that way. So that is one way in which we find new talent. Other times, someone will just hit me at that right time where I'm able to give a piece of my time to them. And it usually takes a couple years. We work with a lot of people off roster, recommending them for projects, understanding how they work, understanding how they're going to invest in their business as well before people ever join our roster. I mean, typically we have some sort of working relationship with someone before they actually join Apostrophe. So that we can also feel really good about going out to clients and saying, this person has the right attitude and work ethic for your project.
Yeah, I've been rethinking over the last couple of years how to bring new artists onto our website and onto our roster and announcing them to the world. And, different artists are at different points in their career, and we've tried different things with each one of them. And it's been really successful, and I've appreciated it. And there's been a few people who are, taking it very slowly. And I've been enjoying that process because it feels more like a consulting relationship, and we're getting things perfect before we say, hey, look who's here, and not having it be exactly the way we want it to be.
And it also gives you that time to fill in the blanks in their work and in their portfolios before you launch them to the world. That said,
definitely,
there are some times where I meet somebody and I'm just like, yes, like love at first sight. That's true. Let's do this. So,
and how often does a spot become available on your roster, or is it not like there's a certain amount of spots? It's just when there's a right person and a right fit, then it happens.
I used to be really fearful of growth and feel like I really had to manage my growth, and I had to have a food photographer or have a car photographer or have a this or have a that. And I've let that go a lot in the last 3 to 5 years. Part of that is just because of the team of people that I'm working with. I really trust the folks that are agenting alongside me right now. I feel super lucky to have the support system that I have. So I feel like right now we have a little bit more capacity than we have had in the past. I do try to make sure that there is an overlap and that it is something unique. A lot of times it's also just driven by sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier of like, what does this artist bring to Apostrophe? Not only from the genre of work, but also their attitude and their collaborative spirit. And if I feel like that's an opportunity and something unique for us to sell, then I try to move that forward.
And do you consult with your other artists when you're thinking about representing new talent?
I don't. I used to, when I was much younger. I thought that I had to get permission. But now I really feel like the artists on my roster need to trust that I'm making the best decisions for Apostrophe that's going to help us as a whole and bring the most eyes to our roster.
I mean, you literally, I swear, said my exact same words. The idea, and I think that's shifted over time. I think this idea of curating a group of talent that will make us a resource for the most creative people out there who are doing work, the type of work that we want to do, is really important. And if I just am sitting here filling slots in my roster, I'm not sure that I will be the most desirable to the people out there. But if I'm thinking about the roster as a whole and everybody contributing and everybody bringing attention to the group, then I see firsthand how that happens. The people on the roster don't always get the benefit of seeing how that actually works. But, where you and I sit, we do see the calls that come in and the conversations that are had. And you do recognize that, one person might have gotten attention for something else that brings attention to someone else, that brings a job back to the first person. It just kind of all comes and goes.
All promotion across the roster is good for everyone on the roster. We have been trying to have more specific conversations with people and give them specific feedback as well, so that they know that we're fighting on their behalf all the way through. Sometimes I think we can get caught up in like moving the promotion forward and just making it happen that we've been trying to take a little bit of a better pause to go back to the artists and give them like, hey, by the way, this print was really enjoyed at the review, and give them specific feedback. because I think it's important for the artists to hear that and know that we're championing everyone across the board. But when we set up meetings for one artist in a market, I really believe that has a halo effect for our entire organization. And that is in part because of the type of personalities that we bring onto our roster. I think that there is a quality of person that we also try to recruit for beyond just creativity.
That's true. That's definitely true. You said something earlier, and I'm blanking on what it was. When my son was younger, he would say, "It flew away, Mom." I think it's this idea of this halo effect. The fact that we're all out there putting good karma into the world, and we are out there individually promoting our own work, but also representing and being part of a group. And I think that comes back to everybody in a positive way.
Definitely. I really encourage the artists on my roster to have relationships with one another, so that someone who is traveling for work to Portland can get in contact with Dan Salinger, who lives there, and they can have a beer, they can share some resources. It goes back to that whole idea of why we're doing this podcast.
Right.
We're all putting things out there in the world, and we need to continue to develop that sense of community. And I think that my artists take advantage of that. I don't have a much younger Kelly would have had fear of those relationships existing, but now I just think that creates a deeper sense of belonging and community at Apostrophe. That's really important.
I agree. And I think that's really a kind of a perfect place to end here, is this idea of community, and that we may sit alone at our desks, especially the photographers, but we are all part of a bigger community. And the more we share and collaborate and help each other, I know the more positive experience we'll all have, and the more opportunities, not just financial, but creative, will come our way.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, always, always, always so fantastic to talk to you, Kelly. I feel like whenever I connect with you, I don't have enough time to ask you all the questions and talk about all the things that we want to. I have a little notepad here, and I'm like, what about this? What about this? Like, so next time you're in San Francisco, which I know is going to be tomorrow, so probably short notice, but soon, or the next time I'm in LA, which will probably be January, I would love to just have a dinner.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for your time, and good luck with your end of year. I hope it's busy and you get to solve a lot of problems and challenges for 2020.
You too. Thanks.
Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. In an industry where the rules are always changing, it's helpful to hear from those on the front line. Heather Elder is the visionary behind notesfromarepsjournal.com. Visit her website for industry updates, stunning photography and video, and the artist behind the work.